Hi, best friends.
I'm Tabby.
And I'm Caitlin. And today we will be talking about A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is the main part of the episode. If you need a synopsis of the book, just go listen to part 1 and we will give you one.
It's a little everywhere, but
I mean, we tried to cut down a little bit because we felt like when we did Mist and Fury, maybe not everything that we included was super necessary to your understanding. So we tried to trim this one down a little bit, but I highly recommend that you read the book if you have not, because our synopsis doesn't do it justice. Mm-hmm. So first we're going to start with an overall rating, what we thought about it.
So I'm not going to lie. A Court of Wings and Ruin is not my favorite in the series. I really loved it the first time I read it, but now that I've read it for a second time, it's probably bottom for me, last in line for me. I'd give it a 3 out of 5. I don't know, it's still good. It's just it's just so much character building, which is great, but it's she kind of saved all of the crazy stuff for the very end.
Yeah, and it felt very, very jam-packed. And so I agree with you. The first time that I read it, I liked it more. I think the reason that we might not like it as much the second time around is because you end up skimming a lot, because there's just quite a bit of filler. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I found myself skimming a lot. I just wasn't interested in some parts the second time around because they weren't super important to the understanding of what was going on.
I also feel like some parts were just kind of lazily written almost, or there wasn't really a point to it, or it didn't really help the storyline. And it also just raised a lot of questions as to okay, well, if this happened, why did this happen?
And we're absolutely going to expand on some of those things that made us feel that way. If I had to give it a rating, I would probably give it a 4 out of 5, just because of how much I love the series. It's it's hard for me to rate it below a 4, but if we're ranking
of the series though,
it is probably my least favorite of the series installments. I agree.
Yeah, fantastic book, don't get me wrong. It's better than most books I've ever read of the series, though. It's my least favorite of the series.
Agreed. Let's start things off on a high note. We're going to talk about some of the things that we love about this book.
So honestly, probably my favorite part of the entire book was the High Lords meeting.
Absolutely.
I loved that entire chapter of the book, from the time we meet Helion to, Tamlin just making a fucking guest appearance that wasn't planned.
It is so funny. Nonstop.
The funniest thing I have ever read. And that's what I love about Sarah J Maas, is that she will have this super serious storyline going and then just give us this comedic break that we need. And so Tamlin freaking walking in and bashing on Feyre, bashing on Rhys, the fights that break out at the High Lords meeting, that, it's my favorite part of the book.
I can't remember word for word what Tamlin says, but
at a certain point, do you remember that noise that she makes when she climaxes? And I was just bud.
And Rhys he's upset. Feyre, she's feeling embarrassed. She's he's trying to undermine me and make me less credible to the other High Lords here. But she's she does a good job at pretending it doesn't bother her.
Just the audacity from Tamlin.
It's wild. If you need a reason to read this book, that's the only reason you need. It's just you can stop reading after the High Lords meeting and it's fine. Best part of the book. Also, another thing that we really love about this book is the library that Rhys has created, a safe haven and a sanctuary for women who are abused. He just has basically created this women's shelter and gives them somewhere to heal, somewhere that they can be safe, and also something that they can do with their lives if they choose to. They can choose to become priestesses if they want, or they can just work in the library. He said some of them just work as acolytes. So
I think that was super, super special. And again, it just kind of shows a soft spot for Rhys. Something else that I loved was the relationship between Nesta and Amryn. So throughout the entire series, like throughout the entire second book, like everyone's like, what? Like Feyre's always like, what is Amryn? And they're like, I don't know. We never asked. It's not polite. And then immediately Nesta's like, okay, but what are you? And she's like, you know what? I'm glad you asked. She still doesn't tell us.
Yeah, but she's like, you're brave though.
But you're brave.
Oh yeah, I do love that. And Amryn acts as a mentor to Nesta throughout the whole book, which I think gives Nesta like something to grip onto. Like she helps her find her footing in this new world that she's just been thrown into against her will. And she's like, we're going to train you and you're going to learn how to control your powers. And, you know, we're going to take this situation and we're going to turn it into something that you control.
It gives her structure that she needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so meaningful to Nesta because obviously she was completely like distraught that she and Elaine were kidnapped. And another thing is just,
we don't love it, but I love the way it was written.
Yeah, it's not that I love that it happened. It's just that I love everything that it was. The Suriel and the Bone Carver both have beautifully written death scenes, and they are so like emotional to me, especially the Suriels. It's a bit more drawn out. It gives like this humanity to these creatures who are old and powerful, more powerful and ancient than like Prythian itself. And it's like that on its face is terrifying, but these scenes humanize these creatures in a way that's, it has you as the reader, like you feel like you just lost a friend. Like it's very emotional. Both of their deaths are emotional. The Bone Carvers is a little less tragic.
You feel like justice for the Bone Carver because he wants to see what's on the other side of death, and so like Sarah gave that to him.
Yeah. And it's like, so he's less like sacrificing himself. The Suriel straight up just sacrifices himself for Feyre, which is incredible.
Great. Well, and I think that just goes to show too, like the impact that Feyre had on like the forgotten creatures of Prythian. The Suriel, like you said, this great and powerful creature, the Bone Carver, like they were willing to lay down their lives because they knew how integral she was to the success of Prythian.
And it's been that way even in the second book too, when she like during the tithe, she gives like the water wraith her jewels to pay her tithe. Like Feyre is very much, I think you even said this last episode, you were like, yeah, she's a high fae with a human heart. That impacts her influence on the world and on these creatures that basically everyone kind of writes off as being like these horrible like creatures that, you know, you just kind of avoid. She builds friendships with them, she bonds with them, and that's something that no one else does.
Well, and I mean, that's even why like Parquin is so drawn to her too, is because he wants the same thing. And so like she has such a way of like creating bonds that she doesn't even mean to.
Yeah, and it's like it really speaks to her character. Feyre is just a beautiful character. I think she's a great hero or heroine in a novel, and I think that especially in this book, you see her having to make like some choices to like protect her own court and her own family, and you're like, oh, so she also has like this, we'll call it like a ruthless side for lack of a better word, but like she will protect what's hers. Like, you know, she'll be generous and loving and kind if you are not harming people. Right. But the second you start like acting up, Miss Feyre is going to put her foot down.
Right.
I love that about her.
Some stuff that kind of stood out to us in this book, well, for me specifically, is Lucian and the theories behind his magical eye that he has. So like throughout all of these books, like whenever Lucian is described, like his golden eye that he has is always kind of attached to that description. And so in the first book, I always kind of thought it was weird how Feyre could tell like it was watching her even when he wasn't watching her. And so on page 30, Farrah kind of asks, the golden eye narrowed, clicking softly, and she said, "What do you even see with that thing?" And he didn't answer. And then later on page 339, Lucian said, "This eye," and he gestured to his metal eye. He said, "It can see things that others can't, spells, glamours. Perhaps it can help me find her and break her curse." So I think that is super weird, and it kind of plays into the idea that Lucian wasn't buying like Farrah's lie at all.
Yeah.
So
she had her tattoo glamored.
Yes. And so like if he can see through glamours, then he knew this entire time that Farrah was not, like, her mating bond was not broken.
I mean, not only was her story not adding up, but he could see that she had this tattoo that was a matching one to the one that Rhys gave her under the mountain. He was like, "Why do you have that tattoo and why is it glamored?"
Right.
So yeah, immediately Lucian was like, "Farrah." I
also just think the story behind the eye is really cool. So we meet Nuon at the High Lords meeting. She is like an old friend of his from the summer court. And we later find out she is the one who is the inventor of this prosthetic eye, and that she kind of specializes in this area. And so if you think back to book 1, Lucian was saying he is loyal to Tamlin because he risked a lot to basically go to the summer court, get this brand new eye for Lucian. But when they're at the High Lords meeting, it says Nuon nodded once in confirmation, her lips pressing into a thin line as she took in Lucian's family. She didn't so much as turn in Tamlin's direction, and he certainly didn't bother to acknowledge her, regardless of the past binding them and their mutual friend. So there's kind of like this animosity between Nuon and Tamlin, and Lucian is this middleman between them.
Yeah, if Lucian and Nuon have like this friendship that's been like sustained over the years, like maybe she has heard through the grapevine like how Lucian fled the spring court, and she's like, well, there must be a reason. I don't really know like what the specific beef would be between Nuon and Tamlin, but they clearly were like, Nuon was like, "I am loyal to Lucian and therefore I'm mad at you." And Tamlin was like, "I'm mad at Lucian and therefore like I'm mad at you." So they just were like
whole mess.
Yeah, it was interesting. It stood out to me when I was reading it, and I was like, kind of weird that like they're mad at each other, but okay.
I think that just goes to show that like even though Lucian made bad choices in the second book, like he always had like this deeply ingrained loyalty to Farrah, and that could just be because Elaine was tied to Farrah, but he at least had the backbone to not turn her in while she was there.
The other thing, and the next thing I should say, that stood out to us was Miriam and Draken just kind of showed up during the last battle. They were like, so Draken was explaining that like that they heard that Hybern was attacking and that Jurian was resurrected. And so then they came, and it's like, how did you hear that? Who'd you hear that from? Because their island was glamored, so that when Rhys, like, they tried to go find them and ask them for help in the war, but it was glamored so well that like it worked against their friends too. So like,
who told them?
Who told you? It doesn't add up. We have an idea of what might have happened if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so like the only theory I can think of as to why they would know about it is if you think back to the night that the cauldron like woke up Farrah, Nesta, Amren, and Elaine, like the night Elaine was kidnapped, they like felt like this disturbance, like the cauldron was calling to them, and Amren said it was because they had all been made. And so I'm wondering if it woke up Miriam as well, because she is also a half fae that was remade into a full high fae. And so I'm wondering if maybe she felt that disturbance too, and that kind of tipped them off to being like there being something weird going on.
Yeah, so maybe like if that woke Miriam, maybe they sent someone specifically to go investigate, like kind of like a spy or something.
That's the only thing besides like they're like Farrah's dad somehow getting a message from them.
But that doesn't quite make sense to me, because why would he know where they're at? Because their island's glamored. So yeah, it's like I feel like your theory makes more sense than anything else, but it's definitely something that wasn't addressed.
Either just be like lazy writing or something else happened.
But that's kind of unlike our girl.
I know.
Yeah, so just some background that we find out in this book about Miriam is that she died during the last battle of like the original war. And Draken knew of this secret hidden island called Kratia. And there was an item there that was forged by the cauldron. It was powerful enough to revive her. So he took her there and used that item to resurrect her. Something that's later like revealed by Asriel a little bit more to the story is that there was a seraphim cartographer named Nephel who, when Miriam went down, she was in danger of drowning. So Nephel, like, who has never really like flown before, somehow like the adrenaline rush or something like allowed her to scoop up Miriam and fly her out of there so she doesn't get like swept up by the sea. So that was Azriel's little inspirational story that he gave to Feyre when she was trying to learn how to fly. It was.
Something else that I noticed in the book that just does not make any sense to me is Feyre's dad freeing Vasa. So if you'll remember in the second book, when Feyre and the inner circle show up to the human realm the first time, she's like, "Where's dad?" And they're like, "Oh, he is meeting with some merchants on the continent about like a threat to the human realm from Prithian." And so we were like, that's weird that other people know about it, but whatever. So don't hear anything from Feyre's dad. And then all of a sudden, he just shows up with a whole army and has met with Lucian, has freed Vasa, the stolen queen, by making a bargain with her keeper. Basically, it's just like, who told him, first of all? Like, I still want to know how they heard about this threat from Prithian. How did he know that there was going to be a war? How did he know where they were supposed to be for it? How did he come across Lucian? There's so many questions I have about how Feyre's dad got involved.
And we were also talking, so Tabby and I were talking about this last night, actually, when we were discussing, like, he freed Vasa, who was sold out to some like old death god. He freed her temporarily from her captor. How? Like,
what is he bargain?
Yeah, what did he offer to this old death god that he was like, sure, you can take my captive, have fun, see you later? Like, what on earth?
Add up unless he was like, I will trade my life in this war for her. But it's like, why?
But yeah, why would the death god care about that? Like
how much of a role did Vasa even play? Like, did she provide people for him? Is that what it was? Or
yes, I believe so. Like her people in her territory were like the soldiers that came. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
And it leads us to some of our other theories we've talked about, maybe of how potentially the Archeron mother was involved or related or descended from Fae. And so like if she had some kind of like knowledge that she passed on to her husband before she died, maybe like he keeps in contact with someone, or if she's a seer, which we'll talk about. But yeah, it's odd for sure. Another just a little tidbit, as we were recording the synopsis, we were like, interesting that the king just kind of like snaps Striga's neck like immediately. She doesn't see it coming, she doesn't fight him off. Because she is
an old death god.
She's an old death god. She is a cold-blooded killer. She loves to just kill. And he just literally walks up to her and snaps her neck. Okay.
There's no way she just dies that easy. Same thing with the king of Hybern. Like Elaine just like sneaks up on him and stabs him in the neck. It's like,
yeah,
he's been around for how many freaking centuries, and then fucking Elaine.
Yeah.
Just pulls a fast one on him.
Literally walks up behind him like, I'm sorry, don't you have the cauldron like snaking its little slithery fingers around?
Yeah, you're telling me it didn't see. Well, I mean, I guess at that time though it was leaking. No, it wasn't even leaking at that time. Fuck, I don't know. Like
Amryn hadn't even gone in it yet. It doesn't make sense.
That makes no sense.
We digress. So this next thing is just kind of like a little bit of history about Prithian. So Cassian and Feyre go to visit the bone carver, and Cassian's explaining to her that there was life before the High Lords took over Prithian. Old gods, we call them. They ruled the forests and the rivers and the mountains. Some were those things. Then the magic shifted to the High Fae, who brought the cauldron and the mother along with them. And though the old gods were still worshipped by a select few, most people forgot them. And I have like a little bit of a point of confusion stemming from that.
To say the least.
The High Fae, they at least claim in their, I guess, religion, if we're going to call it that the cauldron is kind of what forged the world, and like the mother would be, I guess, like kind of like the creator or like the god in that situation. So how is that congruent with the old gods existing in Prithian in the same timeline as the High Fae? Like the bone carver is supposedly an old god, Striga's an old god, and they have a brother who's an old god somewhere in Prithian, and they're like all existing together at the same time.
So the only theory I kind of thought of that would make sense is like, so what if like, because you know how the humans they used to worship the old gods before the wall. So like, what if the humans were there first, they had their old gods, and then what if like the Fae came through the rift that like Amryn came through, and like when they came through, they brought the cauldron and the original like High Fae with them?
I would accept that. Just because, because clearly like things did come through the rift.
Yeah.
So I would totally accept that. The only thing that's like another like a little bit of confusion is I think like what was supposed to have caused the rift was the cauldron, right? The cauldron like pouring its power out was like what created those rifts. So that's an interesting.
I don't know. Well, I mean, that would kind of make sense though if the cauldron was causing the rift. So like what if the cauldron was like creating a whole different like realm, I guess, that the Fae existed in, and it caused that rift, and like some of them came through it to like something that already existed, which was Prithian, and they realized that the humans were there and that they were stronger than them, and basically took over, like made them their slaves, and like instilled in them the idea of like the cauldron in their religion.
That is an interesting like explanation for it. I do wish that she would, like Sarah J would give like an official explanation.
Maybe she will in the next one. I don't know.
Maybe. I hope so. But it is kind of fun to just like theorize.
But I mean, that's the only thing that kind of makes sense in my head. Because like I said, like if you haven't read any of her other books like that, it's an ongoing theme, like different universes and stuff. So could be.
Yeah. So I'm definitely willing to accept that for now and move on.
Makes sense in my head. Some other, just kind of moving on from things that we notice. I also want to talk a little bit about characters and some of the relationships that we see built throughout the series, or this book specifically. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about Lucien and Feyre?
Yeah, so Lucien and Feyre, while she is in the spring court, like kind of spying, she and Lucien actually have like some bonding moments that are like pretty genuine. She still plans to like leave him there, but she's like, she's talking with him, and Lucien tells her, he's like, I was the first to return when that day that you left. I found your melted engagement ring, but I hid it so that Tamlin wouldn't find it. And it's clear that he's also kind of trying to like feel out if she'll be honest about, like the night court at that point. But she's like, no, they melted it off my finger. And he's like, okie dokie. So whenever they return home from that day, like Feyre's really sore from riding a horse because she hasn't done that in a long time. So Lucien's kind of helping her off the horse, and they were walking into the house together. He's telling her about the night of Calanmai. Tamlin refused to participate in the rite, And so Lucian actually had to perform the rite, and it was with Ianthe, and he literally hates her guts. So Feyre, she tells him like she's really sorry and she wishes that he could have been there to stop it. And Lucian says, "You're a better friend to me, Feyre, than I ever was to you." And so that's kind of like the first, that's the first time he's ever like admitted that to her, but I think he's felt that way.
Do you want to hear something funny about Cal and Mai though that I saw?
Oh yeah.
I like watched this TikTok and it was like, does anyone else think it's super freaking weird that they have like this whole ritual where they like he gets to just steal like some random woman because like the moon or whatever fucking told him he could? Like no one else does that. Except for the spring court. And like I feel like they're just out here making their own rules. Like he's like, I can sleep with any woman I want. And then they have the tithe. Like no one else does a tithe. And like just because we can. Like
it kind of feels like maybe they're like kind of outdated things that the spring court still does. Maybe like because they seem kind of barbaric in nature.
Yeah, they do. Is it because I wonder if it's because they're just like so freaking far away from like any other court?
They are the furthest south. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. Like Lucian was like, I guess I'll step in, but
the politics in Prithian, like they're just the spring court's conservative and like resistant to change.
And the night court is liberal.
Yeah.
And so honestly, so is summer court. Good for them.
Yeah. There are some courts that are clearly more progressive than others. That's interesting.
Yeah, like autumn court and spring court are certainly more conservative.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I've never really thought about it that way, but that is kind of how it plays out.
I like that.
So again, some more like developments in Feyre and Lucian's relationship. Feyre does, as she's fleeing home to the night court, she realizes Lucian's in distress and she actually like risks her like escape to go back and save him. As they're like fleeing, Feyre has literally like smashed the fuck out of Ianthe's hand and murdered Gavin and Branna. And Lucian's like, "You were right. That girl I knew under the mountain died." And she was like, "I tried to tell you." Yeah. So yeah, they on page 115, they're like fleeing to go to the night court, but they have to like stay in a cave overnight. So they're like huddling for warmth. They're freezing. They don't have their powers. And Lucian said, "You left us." And Feyre's like, "He said us." Like he didn't say you left Tamlin. He said you left us. And so she responds to him. She's like, "I told you that day in the woods, you abandoned me long before I ever physically left." She's like, "Don't try to put this on me."
Yeah, how dare you?
You fucked up. But their friendship does heal. When they get to the night court, she knows Lucian's distraught about the mating bond situation. So she tells him like the story of how she fell in love with Rhys and came to realize what a good man he was and that he was the one for her, trying to like kind of, give him hope. And their friendship really strengthens, obviously, when Lucian takes a part in fighting Hybern. He volunteers to go to the continent.
Becomes the emissary.
Yeah, their friendship really, it gets healed in this novel.
The next and biggest one, obviously, is Faysand. It's Feyre and Rhysand's relationship. It's unbreakable, even in death. Chapter 14. Caitlin has written here that chapter 14 is better than chapter 55. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but
my jaw is on the floor.
I know. I do love their reunion though. It is so freaking sweet. And I talked about it a little bit in part 1, but just the fact that when she gets home, first of all, Rhys drops to his knees. He bows before his high lady. Love that. That's cute. Yeah. But also it's like he finally gets her alone and she's like, "Do you want me to tell you about everything that happened?" And he was like, "Fuck no. Like, I'm trying to be with my wife here." And like, it just reminds me so much of how when Feyre was living in the spring court, every time she'd come home from the night court, Tamlin would like basically lock her in his study and be like, "Tell me every single thing that you learned 5 times so we can write it down." Jot it down. And so just like the difference between the two, like Rhysand is truly, someone who cares for Feyre, whereas Tamlin was just trying to benefit from the information she collected. And so I thought that was super freaking cute. It was also just like a nice little spicy moment between the two. Like,
oh yeah,
loved it.
It's chocked full of tension.
Draws her a bubble bath. And...
yeah, he draws her a bath because she has just like been in a fight. Like she just fought for her life. And he draws her a bubble bath and then watches her bathe from the doorway. Like, guys,
it was nice.
I'm telling you, like, it's fine that you don't agree, but it's better than chapter 55 in my opinion. I will die on this hill.
That's fine. I agree to disagree. I like chapter 55 better because you get backstory about Rhysand, and I really like that. And you can, obviously we knew he was, you know, just a person who had been through a lot, but I like the character building of Rhysand in chapter 55. I do like the tension in chapter 14 though.
Yeah, and also just like how you can tell how deep their love goes for each other. Like, it's, my heart swells reading about their reunion. It's beautiful. Chapter
14 is beautiful, yeah, because it's like the first time since they've mated that they get to like spend the night together, like wake up in the same bed together. Like, well, I mean, I'm sure they've gotten to spend the night together before that, but like Rhys had moved all of her stuff in there, and then the next, like that night, he was like, let's go take care of this shit with the priestess, and then she was gone the next day.
Yeah, so it was like their first time together in their new life that they were building. Like, they had decided, like, we're getting married, like, we're in love, right, and this is our bedroom. And then you're right. Okay, so chapter 18, Rhys and Feyre are talking. Things got tense because he insulted Nesta, and so he's like apologizing for that. And Feyre says, I didn't mean to undermine you. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're with our family. And so she was like, well, I won't undermine you and you won't undermine me when we're in public. Like, we can call each other out on our bullshit in front of our family. But if we're in front of other people, we need to be a unified front. So they agree to do that. And Rhys is like, of course we'll do that because you're my equal. And that's like something that she never had with Tamlin. So,
I hate the idea of the unified front though thing, because that's what Tamlin and like Anthony, all of them always used to say. And
I know, but here it's like a matter of like mutual respect. Right. So I think it is different. And also Rhys is like, I will fight like with everything that I have to ensure that we're happy. And Feyre's like, not just you anymore. Like, we will fight. Quit taking everything on yourself.
That was one thing about their relationship that like I didn't necessarily love throughout the book. Like, they were both just so self-sacrificial throughout the entire story. It's like, if Feyre wasn't trying to like do something to get herself killed, Rhys was like, don't worry, like, I'll do it. And
yeah, my turn.
Like, no, like, we need each other and blah blah blah. And it's like, but the first chance they get, they're like, I'll fucking throw myself off this cliff right now. I get it, because like we knew, like she was alluding to it the whole story, especially when the bone carver was like, yeah, and somebody has to die to put the cauldron back together. It's like, cool, someone's gonna die.
Who will it be? Rhys and Feyre are like drawing straws.
And the whole time Rhys is like, I will put myself in front of any of these family members. I'm like, cool, so Rhys is gonna sacrifice himself. Awesome.
Yeah, I hate that. Oh wow, whenever they go back to the Court of Nightmares for the first time, there's only one throne. So Rhys, he leads Feyre right up. She takes a seat and he just perches on the armrest, and he's like, I'm assuming there's just one throne because our like visit was unannounced, but like, how dare you? The disrespect.
Speaking of disrespect, the amount of times they freaking boned while people were dying around them was insane. It happened on 2 separate occasions.
At least 2. Like, there could be times that we don't know about.
And Sarah J Maas felt the need to write that into the story. That has always just freaking wowed me. Is like the first time, like, yeah, and we made love to the sounds of the dying. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So the first time it happens, like, literally the next opening line, like after they bone, is only a few more Illyrians died during the night.
Yeah,
like,
while you were fucking, like, what?
Excuse me? We're just gonna say that right now?
I get you guys are like under pressure and stuff, and that's totally cool. Nobody's making fun of you, but like to the sounds of the dying.
Yeah. Yeah,
what a
you need to,
description.
like, you can abstain for one night at least.
Like, oh my God. Yeah.
So later on, when Elaine gets kidnapped by the cauldron's power, Farah's immediately jumping into action. She's like, I have a plan, we have to go get my sister. And not for one moment did Reese say, like, no, you can't do that. No,
Yeah.
he was hyping her the fuck up. He was like, you got it, like, you're strong, you're powerful, you're gonna do it.
Strong, you was kind, you was impotent.
You is impotent, Farah, and you are gonna like pull this off, queen. He was like, pop off, be safe, I love you, I'll miss you. And Tamlin, on the other hand, was always like, leave the house.
Are you joking me?
Like, how stupid are you?
And like, honestly, the ending of the book is my favorite face and like character development. Like, they finally get the opportunity to live their lives freely. Obviously, there's still some stuff going on that they need to resolve, but for the most part, the main threat is gone. They can be free and fly with each other, and so freaking cute.
And that's just so meaningful to both of them, because like we talked in the about in A Court of Mist and Fury, how the wings like symbolized freedom for both of them, and Reese used to fly through the night sky with his mom. Yeah, and Farah, like the wings like symbolized like her gaining independence throughout the second novel. So like that being the ending of this book was just like chef's kiss.
Yes. Some other characters that I want to talk about. So the one thing I do love about this book is that there are a lot of either new characters introduced or minor characters from the first couple of books that were reintroduced in this one that became like more of a key component. The first one that I love this character, and I know no one else does, is Eris. His character is so freaking interesting to me because like he first of all just kind of appears out of nowhere and everyone hates him. He's like against Farah. He tries to like freaking kill her, and then all of a sudden he's working with them. Some switches flipped, and we'll talk about the theories a little bit too, because Reese essentially was like, Eris is a fucking dead man. And then the next thing we know, he's working with him, has partnered with him in the human city. So obviously it starts out rough. He attacks Farah and Lucian. Cassian and Azriel save the day. Freaking stab him in the gut. He survives because he's kind of a cockroach. But then in chapter 26, that's when he forms an alliance with Reese in exchange for the Night Court's support when he makes his bid for the throne. So still obviously doing everything for ulterior motives. However, I think Rhysand allows him to do this because he's been able to look inside Eris's mind and can see something that he trusts. I think Eris allowed him to see maybe what really happened the night of Mor's like
I agree.
disposal. And so I really do think Eris is a good male, as they call them. And
I hadn't thought of that, but I agree with you.
Obviously he doesn't always make like the best choices, and
yeah.
Like he can be kind of a dick, but like
but this is wintertime and it's the forest.
And it's the forest. On page 274 though, Eris, he was basically telling him the night that just Jasminda died, that there were other forces at work that you never considered. And I'm not going to waste my breath explaining them to you. Believe what you want about me. So Eris actually ends up helping Lucian escape to the Spring Court after his brothers killed Jasminda. And Lucian just chooses to like kind of leave that out whenever we're talking about Eris.
Yeah, because Eris is like explaining this to them and he's like, I wasn't there when they killed her. Like, ask him. Like, ask Lucian. And it's like,
I don't know.
Lucian, why didn't you like say that?
Yeah. And so like basically Eris is the whole reason that Lucian is able to even make it to the Spring Court to Tamlin's protection. Eris kind of risked his ass to make sure that Lucian didn't die. And so really just not the bad guy that he was made out to be. And then also just talking about, this is on page 276. Basically he's just spilling his guts the entire chapter, like trying to convince me he's not a bad person. This is regarding the situation with Mor. Whenever they're talking about it, a shadow crosses Eris's face, and he said, there are things I regret. That is one of them. But perhaps one day, now that we are allies, I shall tell you why, what it cost me. So that's why I think Rhys looked into his mind and like what Eris actually sacrificed to make sure that Moore got her independence, essentially. Because once Moore was dumped onto the Autumn Court's property, like it was no longer her parents' responsibility. And I think that allowed Cassian and Azriel to come in and rescue her and take her to Valaris.
Mhm.
And so even though Eris, doesn't really make a point to point that out, I do think he played a big role in her independence.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of the last thing that we noticed that like shows kind of a little window into his soul, that like maybe he's not as big of an asshole as you'd think. So Nuon's explaining that she's created an antidote to Faebane, and Baron's like, I'm not going to take that. You're going to poison me. And Eris is like, I'll take it. Like, thank you for doing that. You're awesome.
Wish someone would.
Yeah. And Farah is like, her inner monologue is like, going at this point, and she's like, it was the most decent I'd ever heard him sound. Eris might have grown to be a good male if he'd had a different father. Baron sucks, and like he's really like trying to ruin Eris, but maybe Eris is not that bad, and he's gonna come through.
I mean, because their mom is a freaking like angel.
Yeah.
And so I feel like his mom probably played a big role in like why he's not a complete fuck up.
Same with Lucian, honestly. And like the thing is with their mom is like she is so powerless against her husband, and he like treats her like absolute garbage,
abuses her.
Yeah. And did they say that the abuse didn't start until he discovered she had an affair?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Helion was talking about like how he wanted to like rescue her from Baron basically, but couldn't just due to politics and stuff. Once Baron figured that out, that's when he started like trapping her in the Autumn Court and like beating her. And yeah.
Big yikes. Pretty bruised ego.
Yeah. But I am excited to see Eris's continued development. Obviously, she's introduced him as a pretty important side character, so he'll be making a comeback in the future books.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the next character we're going to talk a little bit about is Elaine. And we hate Elaine, and we will have more to say about her in the future. But for now, we'll talk about her in this novel. She starts off concerning everybody. So on page 286, Elaine came down the stairs because she heard something. So at this point, they're all downstairs, but Feyre has like a wall up to like keep their noise from leaving because Amren's like telling secrets. So Elaine didn't hear them. So she was like, I think I was dreaming. I think I'm always dreaming these days. I can hear her crying. Everyone thinks she's dead, but she's not, only different, changed as I was. And they're like, okay. So they ask what she saw, and she's like, I saw young hands wither with age. I saw a box of black stone. I saw a feather of fire land on snow and melt it. And they're like, okay, that answers that. Go to sleep. And on page 301, she's at it again. And she's like, twin ravens are coming, one white and one black. But it turns out on page 319, the king's ravens come to try and kidnap Nesta. And so Pharaoh's like, oh, like she's seeing the future. So once they figure that out, Elaine's like, yes, like that's what's happening. And so she's talking about, she's having another vision, and she's like, the queen might come, the queen with the feathers of flame. And Azriel's like, that's Vasa, like the sixth queen. And they're like, cool. So that's whenever they're like, this power could be useful. Like maybe this could be to our benefit.
Do you notice the wording on that though, where it says the queen might come? So like something changed in the future, like something like tipped it one way or the other to make sure that her dad was able to free her briefly from. Interesting.
I wonder if we'll ever get more information about that, about how he freed her.
It's just weird that she said the queen might come.
No, you're right, because with the raven, she said twin ravens are coming. Mm-hmm. She didn't say they might come.
So something tipped the scales to where it made it happen that her father was able to bring her.
Interesting. Put that in your pocket. Save it for a rainy night.
I already put it on my notes.
Write that down.
Down.
Over time, like whenever they finally realize like, oh, she's a seer, I think maybe she starts to feel like heard, maybe. and a little less crazy, question mark. She starts to become like a little bit normal again. Nuala and Caradwyn are teaching her to cook. I'll let you kind of.
Okay, here's the thing. There's no fucking way you go from being batshit crazy to normal overnight. And like, I think she's faking it. And
It was an act.
Yeah, I can't explain why, but I do think Elaine is evil, and we will cover it later, but I don't trust her. Nuala and Caradwyn like start teaching her how to like cook. And by cook, I think they mean spying, because they are literally Azriel's trained spies. And so I feel like they have been like training Elaine in secret, like how to do shady shit.
And Elaine's also been going out of her way to like spend time with Azriel when he offers like, get closer to Azriel.
Because like she was like a freaking nut job. And then all of a sudden she was fine and then she was kidnapped by Hybern and like didn't really panic the way I thought she would. She's just like, oh, hey, you guys are here. That's great. And like that was it. And like she can literally see stuff coming, and it's like you didn't see anything, like you didn't see anything else with Hybern. That was it. And I know the cauldron had some stuff to do with it, but
at the same time, her gift is literally from the cauldron. So
I know. It's like, why wouldn't she be able to see it? And then like she just fucking kills the king of Hybern, like no big deal, like just stabs him in the neck. Like there's no way freaking lobotomized Elaine over here is able to like pick up Truth Seeker, whatever the fuck it's called, and stab him through the neck.
Because literally these are like the High Fae are creatures that can like they can fucking smell the fear on each other. They can smell arousal on each other.
I don't buy
it for a second. Snuck up behind him like unnoticed and stabbed him in the neck. Unless she knows how to glamour herself all of a sudden. That doesn't make sense.
Or she's in on it with the King of Hybern, or whoever like helped the King of Hybern. And we'll talk about this in Silver Flame. It goes all the way up to the top here.
It goes all the way to the top.
I don't trust Elaine.
I don't either.
No.
Yeah.
Too many things happened that didn't make sense with her.
100%. I agree with you.
That's my soapbox though. We'll talk more about Elaine in the future. The next character, I wanted to focus on Ianthe. She's just kind of a rat bitch. Like, I don't know. She's
little crusty ass, wretched ass.
Little crusty ass. So she's just such a pick-me girl. Like, literally made this whole grand show of like not trusting Hybern and like orchestrating this whole heist to like show strength, and like literally got innocent people beat in the courtyard for no reason. Has no power. They even say that on like the beginning of the book on page 13. I've never seen Ianthe summon any greater power than igniting a ball of Phalite in the room. She like planned her whole grand entrance like on the solstice and had to mark spots in the grass to stand so that the sun like rose directly behind her. And then she didn't do anything in this book. She showed up, somehow managed to capture Suriel. That's probably the only thing that probably stood out to me, is that she did snare Suriel. Oh, actually, Suriel knew though that never mind. Yeah, she didn't do anything.
No, she's not impressive at all.
And then just ran right into the Weaver's cottage. Ianthe was a dumb character, and literally the only thing that she ever did was betray Feyre, and then Tamlin was just like, it's okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, she also betrays Tamlin. It's just that he's too dumb to like realize. So hate her guts. The only thing that I loved about her in this book was the fact that she had a horrible, brutal death.
Like what? Like, I really thought they were going to build up Ianthe a little differently, if I'm being honest. They made her like seem this super conniving, vengeful priestess, and like made it sound like all the other high priestesses like didn't really trust her. And so I was really hoping we'd build more on that story about like why they don't trust her, and like how she ended up in the position that she was in, like how she met the King of Hybern over in Balahan, and like we just don't really get that. And then I feel like she just kind of killed her off because she didn't really play a role anymore.
Yeah, and like that's fair, I guess, if like she's not going to be a problem in the future, like but yeah, it would be interesting to know a little more of the backstory there, because clearly she's been plotting for a long time. Like She's been trying to seduce high lords and their sons. Like, she's been power hungry, literally. I mean, I'm not going to say her whole life, but like at least most of her adult Fae life, she's been trying to be like in charge somehow. She's conniving.
Hate her. Glad she's dead. Moving on.
Rest in not peace.
Pieces.
Rest in pieces. So Tamlin has quite the redemption arc in this novel, but we start off hating his guts as well.
It starts off rough.
He is still that like completely like love sick, like mentally ill, an absolute fool. He explodes the room, injuring Feyre. She didn't shield herself, and he immediately is remorseful, or at least like acts like it. And Feyre's like, I think he realized that like if I wasn't High Fae, like that could have killed me. The thing is though, if he was truly sorry,
he wouldn't have done it.
He wouldn't have done it, because this is the second time he's done it. He cannot control his temper for shit. He, at the High Lords meeting, good Lord, he is out of
control.
Yeah. He, like you were saying, he like is taunting Rhys and Feyre about like the fact that he has also slept with Feyre.
He knows her very intimately.
And he also, like, whenever, at this point, before he was at this meeting, he didn't know that Feyre was High Lord of the Night, or sorry, High Lady of the Night Court. And so he's like, so it wasn't enough for you to, like, be married to me. You had to be, like, High Lady. So he, like, accuses her of being power hungry. And she's like, are you for real right now?
Fuck up, Kyle.
She's like, I didn't even ask for this. It was literally just my destiny, okay? But you know, he has that redemption. He rescues Feyre as they're rescuing Elaine, and also the revival of Rhys whenever he says, "Be happy, Feyre." It
was a really cute moment.
It is. It's very sweet, but then at the same time, it's like, is that enough from him? To like forgive him?
I even wrote down, like, at no point in time has he actually apologized for anything that he's done. Like, I know he revived Rhys, and like that's awesome and that's great. That's a huge character development for him, but he still has never apologized to Feyre, and I don't think he will, because I don't think he thinks he's wrong.
Yeah, no, I think he's too proud to even like consider that he could be the one in the wrong. Like, I think his behavior at the meeting with the High Lords, I think he kind of believed like every single insult he was throwing out. He was like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm good, you're evil. And that's just
I was surprised that he even showed up to help them. Although I do think it's great that he had this whole plan that he had kept to himself. He's like, yeah, I'm doing this so I can like spy on Hybern. But it's like, you got to tell other people though.
Yes. But the thing is, he doesn't trust anyone else because he's isolated himself.
But it's just like, nobody knew that. And that's why you weren't invited today.
Yeah. So he is very much like, he's completely foolish, but he's not stupid. He knew what he was doing and he had a plan, but he just is so like one track minded. Like he can't see things like outside of his own like scope of how he's viewing the world and like what things should be in his perfect little universe. And so he's just like, he's literally blindsided whenever Feyre leaves his court again. Like, are you that dumb?
Like, come on, man. Literally everybody else saw it for what it was worth.
Lucian, Jurian, the incestuous twins,
the incestuous twins were there for 2 seconds and they were like, yeah, we got to get this bitch drugged immediately.
Yeah, she is a threat. Oh my God. Wow. He's dumb. But we do at least forgive him a little bit. He should apologize still.
Anyway, I'm interested to see Tamlin's continued development. Again, We are unfinished, I think, with the other High Lords. They kind of made that clear that there was a lot of rebuilding that they'll need to do, and it's going to require all the help of the High Lords. So I do think, again, Tamlin will be returning to the future books. How helpful will he be? That remains to be seen.
We'll see.
Looking at the inner circle, I want to talk about Asriel. I loved Asriel's development in this book. And I even said, like, in the last book that, like, he's a cool character, but, like, Cassian kind of outshone him in the second book with his relationship with Farah. But Asriel steps up in this book. So obviously him and Cassian come to save Farah, and I literally sobbed real tears whenever he landed in the snow. She's like, oh, it's Asriel. I'm like, oh, it's Asriel.
Our king.
Our king. I was so excited. Some of the, like, major points in this book, like, between him and Farah. First one is, him volunteering to show her how to fly. Flying in his Illyrian heritage is a really big pain point for Asriel. And so the fact that he was the first to, like, volunteer just shows that he wants to be able to relate to Farah and show her that, like, even though she's starting, at an older age, like, he did it, she can do it, and he's the perfect person to train her how to do it. He stands up for her at the High Lords meeting. So obviously he was a little on edge. Everyone was a bit on edge. But the second that Tamlin starts spouting off some bullshit, he's like, don't talk about my High Lady like that. And immediately goes up to bat for her. And I think that's really awesome. And the fact that she makes a spot for him at the table, and he is just so willing to, kind of bend to what she needs. He's a good friend. Also with Elaine, I think part of that was for selfish reasons, why he would so desperately want to be the one to go rescue Elaine. It's pretty clear that he has a soft spot for her.
I think she's fooling him.
I think she's fooling him because he is a gentle giant who just wants love desperately.
Yeah.
I think he needs love because he's never
had it his whole life.
I really hope she's not trying to pull a fast one on my boy Az. I'll fight her.
I will literally reach these pages.
But the development between the two of them was awesome. And I really hope Asriel eventually gets his own book. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but he just has such an interesting backstory. Thank you. If you listened to our mini-sode last week, there are so many fanfics that people have written for you. So even if he doesn't get his own book, just go to Wattpad. There's something there, I'm sure.
Pick your happy ending.
But I am excited for Asriel and his continued story.
I love his character.
Same.
So the next relationship we're going to talk about is the one between Cassian and Nesta. They start off very similar to how they were in the second book. They were very much like kind of bickering with each other. Cassian would like tease Nesta, and Nesta would be like, leave me alone. You're disgusting. You disgust me. I wrote here that they're the textbook example of they're only being mean to you because they like you. Like, it's very childish, very immature. After the battle in the summer court, whenever like Hybern was like expecting or unexpectedly attacking them, Nesta gets super worried because when everyone else returns from that battle, Cassian didn't, because he was off like telling people's families like that their loved ones were dead.
So sad.
Yeah, it's actually horrible, but he's like the general of the Illyrian army. So if he knew the people that died, he would go talk to their families in person. But Nesta immediately is panicked because she is not seeing him, and she assumes the worst, like that he's injured or worse. And so Moore has a little bit of a jealous moment whenever Nesta's like asking about him. She's like, what do you care? You're an asshole.
Like, what do you care?
Yeah. And it's like, Moore, you should know a thing or two about like loving someone but not being honest with them. So that is kind of the first time that we see that Nesta like actually is worried. On page 514, another battle, Cassian gets like a small wound on his arm, and it's really not like a big deal, He's like, it'll heal itself. I just need to kind of like patch it up. But Nesta is like, how can I help? And she actually patches his arm for him. And they're all like, oh, like, okay. Like everyone's just kind of watching it like interesting. And then at the end, during the last major battle against Hybern, page 652, Cassian is laying there on his freaking deathbed. Like he is severely injured and like the king is gonna come finish him off and he knows it. So he's so telling Nesta, oh guys, it is heart-wrenching. He says, I have no regrets in my life but this, that we did not have time, that I did not have time with you, Nesta. I will find you again in the next world, the next life, and we will have that time. I promise. And she does not leave her side. She is going to sacrifice.
She like lays herself on top of him and is just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, she definitely feels that love that neither of them have actually admitted for each other at this point. But yeah, she gets pretty shaken up though, and we'll kind of revisit her story in book 4 and also in Silver Flames book 5. Yeah, like she's unwell.
And remember too, like at the beginning of the book, like Farrah's like, why do you keep bothering with her? And he's like, because I can't walk away. Yeah. And so it's like there's gonna be some stuff between them.
Yeah.
You just know. Nesta, I don't know, she's an interesting character. I've never been one to like really love Nesta, but I do think she definitely kind of came, obviously there's a lot going on with her, and she's gonna be one to follow. She's got this crazy power inside of her that no one really knows what it is, and everyone's terrified of her. But I mean, she definitely strengthened her relationship with Farrah, and I think they kind of had to come to Jesus until her dad died. But
yeah, that was another weird thing for Nesta's character, because like in the first book and even in the second book, she's like,
we didn't care,
fuck our dad, like he's an asshole, he's a coward. Like she did not care for him. The only people that were like ever showed her dad like affection were Elaine and Farrah. And
really just Elaine though.
Mostly just Elaine, but Farrah did have like a relationship with her dad. Like she did care about him. She also thought he was a little bit of a coward, but you know, he was.
May he rest in peace.
But yeah, he did prove to them that he regretted, you know, the way he acted whenever they had their, you know, they lost their fortune. He regretted how he didn't take care of his family. So next we're going to talk a little bit about Morrigan,
honey. Dude, I still don't know what's going on with Mor, and I don't think we ever will. She did nothing this book except for cause problems.
Like, yeah. And when Farrah would call her on her shit, she would get so mad.
Pissed, yeah.
Like, girl.
It's like with the stuff with Nesta and Elaine, instead of being helpful, she's like, here, let's just drink instead of acknowledging like Nesta just went through something very traumatic. And yeah, she's not nice, but it's because she just like had her whole freaking life ruined. And Mor was like, yeah, here's a whole bottle of wine. It's okay to just drink out of it. And it's like, shut up. Like
Mor is like that one friend who will never like stop making everything about them at like the party or whatever. Like,
well, and like the whole thing, like I said, we don't really see much from her, and like she's pissed at Rhys the whole time because of the stuff with Eris, but like refuses to tell anybody what really happened, and doesn't really talk about that night, and like has this animosity towards Eris, and it's justified if that's truly what happened. So she's pissed at Rhys the whole time. She's pissed at Farrah most of the time. Divulges, you know, the reasons why she's been dragging our poor boy Asriel along for 500 years. And it's not even for a good reason, because like she acts like, I know in the court of nightmares or whatever, like it's frowned upon that she's not reproducing with a male, but like she's acting like Rhys and Cassian and Asriel would care. Like Asriel literally just told Farrah the whole story about Nephel and how her mate was a woman, and like they're like, yeah, she's a freaking amazing warrior. And Mor is like, I can't tell them my secret or they'll hate me. And it's like,
yeah,
why would you think that?
Ever given you that impression? What has ever like led you to believe that? Because also not only is it, you know, like there are other examples of people that they care for who are, you know, gay, but she talks about in Valaris how it's like, there's that restaurant where it's kind of like a safe space for
like a gay
queer
bar.
people. Yeah, because like the owner of the restaurant and chef that like owns it is also
Rita's.
queer. Yeah, Rita's, that's what it's called. And so it's like, if that exists in Valaris, like this place that you call home, like clearly this community is an accepting one. I don't really know, because like I understand. There's like nuances that go along with it. It's like people do have fear coming out to their family 100%, but I can't imagine living for 500 years with the people that I like. I would lay down my life for them, and they don't know that about me.
Purposefully knowing full and well one of them has like deep feelings for you and is like holding out hope because you haven't told him no. And like keep relying on him as like an emotional beanbag essentially, and like,
and the
do you think that's okay?
Yeah, she doesn't even have to come out. She could just reject
I'm not
him,
interested.
But she doesn't, because she wants to have like that backup, like security.
Right. She even said like, I've thought about sleeping with him just to see. And it's like, that's fucked up.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard. And thank God she didn't go through with it, or I would like hate her guts.
Yeah. And so I don't know. And like on top of that, her whole involvement with the war and stuff, it's like she wanted to go out and fight, but we still haven't seen any of this crazy power that she has. And I feel like the war against Hybern is probably a pretty good time to like demonstrate that. I don't know. Something's weird about her. And
another thing that's like, what is like, if her power is the power of truth, what is the power of truth? Because she's keeping secrets.
Lying to your family.
So I don't understand her power at all, or how it's
like, does it count if it's like a lie by omission, or like, I guess I don't understand what the power of truth even means.
I don't know, because even when she told the queens in the second book that like my power is truth and like here's all this situation, they didn't believe her. I'm so mad.
I don't know about more, and I honestly don't care. I don't like her as a character.
I don't either. Yeah, like email us if you're mad that we don't like more.
Sorry if like you feel like that's a crime against you, but like
we're not homophobic.
This is not a hate crime. We just hate her character.
Do not come at us with that bullshit. No. More just sucks. No, because we're all for the fact that Cassian,
we love the inclusivity.
We were talking about this last night. Cassian and Azriel 100% have slept together. I don't think that they would have slept together, just the two of them. I think it probably was like an orgy situation with Helion, probably, but who knows. But I also think they weren't sober, probably, but I think they did it once and then just decided that was too weird and they're never going to do it again.
But yeah, because like even in the second book, Cassian was like, yeah, we used to like fuck in front of each other, and it's like
that's like, not a thing that people do.
Like him, Reese, and Azriel, they were like, yeah, we just like used to sleep with women just like in that cabin, and I'm like,
we're just roomies. Just roomies doing roomy things. Like,
you can't be 500 years old and not have like dabbled in multiple. There's like I'm sure even like, Rhys-Ann has like slept with men. Like there's no way he hasn't.
Oh yeah.
What a dominating man.
Because like think about when you're like in a High Lord son position, like you probably have people like throwing themselves at you.
You probably slept with other High Lord sons. Even dude, he's probably slept with Tamlin.
They were friends.
They were friends. I bet they have.
That's where all this animosity is coming from.
We've cracked it, dude.
Oh my God. Like, just get that out in the open, boys. It's okay.
Like, no one's judging you.
Nobody's judging you. Well, I am judging you for Tamlin specifically for being an asshole.
Well, he didn't used to be an asshole, though, was the thing.
Yeah.
He's just misguided.
Maybe he's so bitter about Reese because, like, maybe he caught feelings for Reese, but like Reese, it didn't mean anything to him. Guys, we're writing a fanfic.
Anyway, check out our
then-
fanfic next week on Wattpad.
And then Farrah came along and he was like, yeah, okay, I'm in love with Farrah. And Reese was like, no,
I'm in love with Farrah. I
Tamlin's
actually just read a book that's really similar to this plot line. If you haven't read the Fortuna Sworn series, this is essentially the plot.
Oh my God, I have to read those. Wow. All right. So anyway, we digress again.
But anyway, they've all slept with other people. There's no way around it. Talk about Amryn.
So Amryn, what is she? She's a being that we don't understand.
We don't
She
know.
came from like this other world. She was like created to be like a soldier for like some other being that ranked even higher than her. She had a father, at least. She never said anything about a mother. I don't really know how her beings work, if there's like biology involved. I don't know. Anyway, she said like she was not supposed to have like feelings of curiosity or love or like compassion. Like she kind of just existed to be like a killing machine, but she was curious. And so when the rift opened up, she was like, I'm just gonna like step through that. And then she got trapped and she was like, oh, at the end, whenever she chooses to, I don't know if it's when she chooses to come back or if it's before she actually sacrifices herself and she is explaining her choice to Farrah, but she tells Farrah that she wonders if her father had opened that rift as a gift, because he could see that she like didn't actually belong in their world. So that kind of like suggests that it's not necessarily that they aren't capable of feeling love and compassion. It just seems like more of like a rule.
Not to.
Yeah, like more of like a societal thing of whatever universe she's from.
Yeah, it's super unhelpful that she literally doesn't remember.
Yeah, all she knows is that like when she bound herself into a fae body, she definitely could feel things at a much more magnified level than when she was like her being before that.
I do think it's weird though that she can literally remember that she had a father and that he sent her across, like that the rift opened and that she knew she was a soldier, but she doesn't remember her name or what she is. Selective memory, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, she could just be lying. She lies a lot.
She's a liar.
And like her lies are not malicious, but she sure does lie a lot. But yeah, it's like we see this new side of Amryn, how much she cares for her family and she's willing to do anything for them, literally lay down her life for them. And the mentorship and friendship between her and Nesta is beautiful. I think it gives Amryn kind of a newfound sense of purpose to be a mentor to Nesta. And of course, it's really important to Nesta. She's feeling super lost.
She needs that.
It's a very lovely relationship.
That kind of wraps up the character side of it. Really, like I said, the whole point of this book, I think, was just to like build on characters and like wrap up the story of Hybern. But I think it's also preparing us for like the future books. We'll move on to my favorite part personally, are the theories. There's a lot for this book.
Y'all better buckle up. If you're not sitting down already, sit down.
Yes. So we already talked a little bit about the theory of like the cauldron and was it there first? Was it not first? Dagden and Branagh kind of touch on it too, is like on page 82, they're like the exact spot exists because a person of great power or a mighty object passed through it. And they're talking about the wall. And so I am wondering if like the wall was built where that original rift was, or that original like rip in the world was, and like things are still like maybe trying to pass through it, and that's what caused like damage to the wall eventually, like essentially.
I love that so much.
Because like I feel like they talk so much about this rift that appeared and then like never followed up on it, and then they talk about like how something's damaged the wall but they don't know what it was and it was too long ago for anyone to remember, and so like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I also think it's weird how this isn't really a theory, this is more just like a question, like how they use last names just kind of willy-nilly in this book. Like why did we need to know about Lucian's last name or like the Archerons, but like we can't know about like Rhysand's or Tamlin's, or like do other people just not have them? Do the family names not matter?
Yeah, it's like, what is like the tradition around like surrounding last names? It would make sense to me for Feyre to have one, just because like humans traditionally have last names.
Part of that, I think it may tie into like other series, so I'm not sure. That's an ongoing one that may develop later.
We have so much to talk about when we get to discuss the other
books.
Yeah.
The next one is the young queen who became a crone. So right after Tamlin takes Feyre and Lucien away from the king of Hybern, he basically invites the rest of the queens to like try their hand at hopping into the cauldron, see what happens. And so the young queen, who was kind of like the ringleader of this whole shenanigan, was like, I'll go first. Absolutely. Like, I would like to be young forever. Cauldron immediately makes her this old withered crone. She is immortal, but she is old and gross.
I am deformed.
I are deformed. I think it backfired because she doesn't have Fey blood. Either that or Nesta and Elaine just took everything the Cauldron had to offer. But my theory is that it didn't react that way to Nesta and Elaine because their mom does have Fey blood in them, and it allowed them to like take the change better.
Yeah.
And like become high Fae, because I don't think what the queen was turned into is even high Fae. Like, I think it made, I don't know what it made.
I think she got turned into some kind of like immortal being, but yeah, like it wouldn't, I don't think she would be high Fae because
high Fae don't age.
That wouldn't make sense that she would be aged like that because of her current age, you know, going in.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I don't know if it's like a divine intervention from the Cauldron and whoever runs it or what, but I do think it has to do with them having Fey blood. I do want to talk about Elaine's ability as a seer. So if you remember my theory from the very first book, Feyre's mom made her at the ripe age of like 9 swear to protect her family as the youngest child with 2 older sisters and a father, to protect them and make sure that their lives go smoothly. So my theory is that Feyre's mom had the seeing ability as well, and basically like foresaw like Feyre's like path that she needed to take in order to eventually like defeat the king of Hybern. And so like there was a chain of events that needed to happen, and like her making that promise to her kind of like kick-started it. So I think Elaine gets her seeing abilities from their mother, but I also think Feyre sometimes has them too, because if you'll remember, she used to have dreams about Amarantha, and she used to dream about like the sky, and like
she knew what the adder looked like in her dreams too before she ever saw it.
So I think all of them have like, they had abilities before they actually became Fae, and they were enhanced once they became Fae.
Yeah, I totally would believe that. And also, like, if Feyre's mom was a seer and she like could maybe like foresee like her own death like coming up, so she maybe prepared her husband about like the future, what was going to happen, and she was kind of like, here's what needs to happen. Feyre needs to be like the provider, and maybe that's why he didn't step up.
And she's like, when the time comes, like, you need to get this army together, this is who you need to look for, this is what you need to say to like make it happen.
That would make more sense than what we have now explaining it, because we don't have any explanation right now.
That makes sense. Yeah. Ooh, and I wonder if it's like because they were from the 8th court, like if that is like something that like happened like frequently, like seers came more frequently from like the 8th court. Like in the Autumn court, they have like fire and like
it's like their power, like their court power, I guess you would call it, like court family power.
Interesting.
Like Tamlin's a shape-shifting. Yeah.
That makes sense.
one other, just because I don't think that we've mentioned this, we've definitely talked about it before, but I don't think we've mentioned it yet on the podcast. But Farah had like asked if it was possible about the cauldron misfiring. And so like you point out here, Miss Sarah J doesn't usually like include stuff for funsies. Like it usually has like a purpose. So it's like,
is that foreshadowing?
Maybe it misfired Lucian and Elaine's mating bond, because their mating is just like
not working.
It doesn't make sense. So we'll keep that in mind.
I feel like, I don't know, I'm a firm believer that Sarah J Maas slips things in there that matter later on. So if you ever see weird shit in her books, it probably matters.
Yeah. Write it down.
Write that down. It's important.
Flag it, sticky note it, highlight it, write it down.
I know like a lot of people after reading this book, they're like, Azriel and Elaine are going to end up together. But I don't think that's the case.
I don't think so either.
I don't know, because like I think it's really weird. Okay. They always talked about how being mates is like super freaking rare.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
like she just happened to be mated.
It could have just happened because like the cauldron was like shooting out a bunch of power anyway.
Yeah.
And
it's like, because like they're super special and like nothing's been made like that. And so the cauldron's like gotta mate you off because you got a lot of power.
That's good point, because who says it to Farah? Maybe it's the Suriel in book 2, and because she's like kind of surprised when she learns that she is Rhysand's mate, and the Suriel is like, does it not make sense? Like he's the most powerful High Lord in history. Right. You were made into a High Fae, like you guys are a pretty like great match. And Farah's like, I didn't really see it that way.
And Lucian's the son of a High Lord. Well, Lucian is like the heir to the Summer Dawn Court, wherever Helian's from. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense.
And Lucian definitely has powers, like, you know, he's got like the fire powers or whatever, but do you think he has other powers that he keeps tamped down? Because
I do.
He's like, that would be super sus.
Because remember when Farah used like the bright light or like the healing power to like break the bond or like the thing that the King of Hybern had at his castle.
Oh, yeah.
And Lucian was like, I knew what that was because I have a friend who can do the same thing. What if he's his friend and like he can do that?
He can do the same thing. So like,
because she got that from Helian.
Maybe he knows that he's Helian's heir, but he's like, maybe he's scared to bring it up because he doesn't want Helian to like freak out and like try to kill him or something. Like
maybe that's why he can see through glamours with his eye, because like he has the ability to like break
Bell Cleaver.
Yeah. Oh. And like he just uses like his eye as like kind of a conduit, basically.
I definitely think that makes more sense than just the mechanical eye having that ability. Right. It would make sense that it's like kind of a way to amplify his powers.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
That's an idea.
That. We just keep adding on to these things.
Sarah J Maas, hire me on. I will finish your novels for you. It's fine.
Yeah. Hire us as consultants. We'd love to help.
We've got a lot of ideas.
Yeah. Sarah, shoot us an email at thesisterswarden@gmail.com.
And same for you guys. That kind of wraps up our take on A Court of Wings and Ruin. We were super, super excited to cover this one today. We're excited to go over the ACOTAR Christmas special that is A Court of Frost and Starlight for our next episode. If you have any theories though, or thoughts, or if you read anything that, kind of strikes you as interesting, email it to us, send it in to us. We're always super excited to take new ideas from y'all. If you want to keep following along with some more of Sarah J Maas's work, the new Crescent City novel just recently came out. This is a plug for that. It was amazing. Definitely encourage you guys to pick up that series. Not a sponsor. Wish it would be.
Just a fan.
Just a really big fan. Yeah. But yeah, tune in next week when we cover our next mini-sode.
Yeah, so next week we will be chatting about our Goodreads 2022 reading challenges and the books we've read so far this year and what we thought of them. And yeah, we'll just be kind of chatting about that. So like we
If you have
said,
any
email
books
us.
that you'd like to add to our Goodreads list, let us know.
Oh yes, if you have any good recommendations, we want to hear them. And as always,
Let's get lit.